buy granules. Usually they sell it, not usually, last week they were selling it for 2,000 naira a bottle. Yesterday they told me 2,005.
In just how many days?
2 days, 3 days, I can't tell.
No, you see Babu's face.
Someone could have bought the same granule in the morning for 2,000 naira. I went in the evening.
True.
I was still 2,000.
True. It's the way the prices of things just,
I tell you, it's terrible.
Well, yeah, the NBS relating to that released the new figures for food inflation and overhead inflation. You saw the figures. All were your thoughts.
The way it is going, you see, government, we need to act fast. We need to see what can be done constructively to remedy the situation, because I'm just wondering, I know it requires a concerted effort. The government, the people, all hands must be on there. When I talk about the government, of course, all the 3 tiers of government should be involved. And the CBN, particularly with their monetary policy, they should see how to tinker with the whole thing to help the people. Meanwhile, the direction government is going, good as it may be, but it's not yielding the kind of results that we would have expected it to yield. But if you ask me if there are things that they should do better, I would first say they should take their attention away from giving too much to palliatives. Putting their whole, centering all their efforts on the provision of palliatives.
Are you talking about this new 20 trucks of rice now?
That's the telling issue. You hear people from some sections saying, we are still expecting our rice, and you wonder how long will this last?
I mean, it's just about 2-3 cups per family.
How long? How many hours would you think of consuming that? That is not a solution. You see, palliative had always been there, especially the medical people will understand it very well. That you're having malaria, and the symptoms are coming, the fever, the headache, and you are given a drug to just relieve you of your symptoms, headache, fever, whatever. But it doesn't solve the problem. You need to still address the cause of the condition, the cause of the problem. You still need to address it. We have a very serious economic issue at hand, and we should be thinking of how to remedy it. So when you hear government talk about palliative, it sounds lazy. But should they not provide palliative at all? Of course, they should provide palliative to assuage the pains of the people. But the emphasis is too much on palliative. And the people are not even trusting that effort so much because of the experience people had regarding this COVID-19 palliative. Remember? So you see a situation where long after the need of the palliative, people went to break in. And in this situation of economic hardship, people do not have confidence that this thing will be far-reaching, that it will come to them. They still feel it will go the way of the COVID-19 palliative. But even if it were to reach the people, it doesn't solve the problem. We know the cause of the problem. We know how we should approach it. So why are we not doing it? Why are we not doing the things that we are supposed to be doing? We know that it is food inflation that is driving the rest of the inflation.
Yeah.
So if it is food inflation, then we know that, we had this problem, this weather problem, we had this insecurity issue, or we are having insecurity issues still. We have not been fully resolved. We had this impact of fuel subsidy removal, that is petrol subsidy, especially the removal of subsidy on PMS, that is petrol. the cost of transportation rising so much, the foreign exchange instability or the rising foreign exchange rate, these are things that we know, these are things that has affected us. So if we want to remedy it, how are we addressing the forex issue? How are we addressing the transportation issue? We heard about the 6G, the provision of the 6G buses. To what extent? How many? Like in Akwa here, I don't know whether any has arrived at 5 So
I'm sure if it had, we would have seen it or we would have noticed.
government is slow about this thing.
Mm.
And if it is so, it would be worsening the situation because you are spending money to provide this palliative. So if you are spending money to provide, you should get your results on time and be able to remedy the situation on time. But that is not what we are seeing. You see, at the beginning of this year, in the presidential speech, you heard him talk about the 500,000 hectares of land, cultivating the 500,000 hectares of land. To what extent this has been done, it seems to be shrouded in secrecy, and people do not have sufficient information to be able to analyze the efforts of government. Government is trying to give information, but it's not sufficient because you should be able to tell us you've done 100 hectares so far, and these are the places that you have done. We are heading to 300. So we could even see the things about releasing funds, buying this and that, for this and that. And we begin to hear things, frightening things like touching our reserve, the food reserve.
Yeah.
So if you
There was even an issue, I think was last week or 2 weeks ago, where some people, some lawmakers said that, we no longer have food reserve and they fear that Nigerians will soon, take to the streets in protest.
yes, these are things that are very frightening. You know, it's a strategic thing to keep a food reserve for a country. You know, this food reserve meant for very emergency issues like we are in wartime or some kind of thing that would require us to touch. But if we have had to touch the food reserve, should government not tell us we have used 50% or 60%? Or does it mean they have cleared it all up? That 100% we don't have food reserve again in our country? If it is so, come out and tell us, but not just telling us, also tell us the plans, the strategic plans you have put in place to replenish what you have taken. So you mentioned something about the food reserve and you are not accounting for it. So this issue of lack of transparency and accountability is not also helping matters at all. You're keeping the citizens in the dark. It is not helping matters at all. We talk about the government acting proactively. You see, when we are still in the planting season, so very soon we'll start our harvest. So if you are going to, what plans are you putting in place to ensure that you protect the farmers? What plans have you put in place to ensure that the yield that is coming from the farms will be well priced, well distributed? Well, when I talk about protection of these things, I also talk about the preservation of these items such that we don't suffer losses, post-harvest losses that would likely also dwindle supplies of food. So those things that should be addressed are not being addressed. Your plan for us to be after September, as we are going into the dry season, that we should have plan in place to continue cultivating items like maize, products like maize, rice, and cowpeas, all those things that we can do during the dry season through irrigation. We talk about the basin authorities and all what would have helped us to ensure that our agriculture is promoted or that this funding that you are providing is well utilized. You talked about the ginger fund. You know what is the status now how many people benefited from that, what are we expecting in how many months, and so on. So speaking smartly from the government is, when I say smart, I'm not talking about being smart in English form, I'm talking about the acronym of SMART. Speaking smartly in terms of being specific, measuring what you are saying, you know, checking it if it is achievable, realistic, and well timed. If government is in that direction, it would help, because communication is key in this business of governance. You have to carry the citizens along. The citizens would need to know what is going on, such that they could also be prepared to embrace your programs and see how they can turn it around to make it work. The other day, I heard the person in charge of SMIDA, that is the Small and Medium Enterprises Agency, saying that they only provided input for this economic activities that is going on. Talk about the palliative issue, talk about the assistance to the small businesses and so on. So you would also wonder, we had SMIDA in place. So why are they not at the forefront? Why are they not the ones championing the operations as it stands today? You don't hear anything about Bank of Industry, or are you hearing things about Bank of Industry? No, not even Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture.
Yeah.
Bank of Agriculture. We should be hearing the activities of the Bank of Agriculture, but rather we are hearing things regarding CBN funding agricultural products or processes, or agricultural funding to this and that. So Bank of Agriculture is supposed to be a specialized unit that understand how to carry out these things. So if you are keeping them at the background and you have the CBN at the forefront, one begins to wonder if it is very, very appropriate. The idea is good, but should it be the CBN that is championing this? It brings up a lot of concern in that direction as well. So government being definite about the immediate solution beyond this palliative issue, and the medium-term decision and the long-term interventions that they should bring to the people. They should be very clear in that communication. But for now, I don't think government has done well in terms of being very clear.
Marvel, still on this food inflation thing, you know that it's well known, and you have also said that you know food inflation is what drives the all other figures.
Yes.
Now, is there a way or measures that the government can take in terms of price stability? Is there a way that they can regulate prices of staple food items?
Yes, it can be strategically done, but you cannot just fix prices for people's products. You cannot just come and say, from today, be selling Gary for 1,000 naira or for 100 naira. Government cannot do that. But it can be strategically done because of the forces of demand and supply. So all what you need to do is to ensure that you give strategic support to these people. When we talk about strategic support, for example, you see, what is it that is driving cost of food? You look at transportation, for example. So if you identify maybe cooperatives or unions or associations of traders that are dealing with stable food items, for example, you make them work in cooperatives and pull them together. If you pull them together and they tell you they are going to a far place, maybe 700 kilometers away or 500 kilometers away, you measure and say, okay, I'm going to provide a big, truck, a trailer or something. So all of you would get your items and it will be conveyed.
Yeah.
So that kind of palliative would help to drive down price of items in the market while also still encouraging production of those items. But the situation that we are having at hand, in terms of the decision of government to suspend duties and tariffs and taxes, as it were, and
for 150 days.
For 150 days. You see, when you look at it strategically, you see those number of days maybe too many. I may not, it's too many.
It's too long?
It's too long.
For real?
Yes, it is too long. Let me explain. You see, at the port, there may be some items that were there already at the port. Now, were these items supposed to go for the duties, or they were supposed to enjoy the suspension? Of course, immediately that order was made, executive order was made, then they will need to suspend that. Now, all these items will come into the market. Then you keep that 150. I guess it is up to it is up to 6 months or thereabout. Should be up to 6 months. 6 months. So that period is so long that you have these things coming in to the country. Don't forget, you are trying to encourage your local production. So when you have that external products coming, you are killing the local production, because those people will not be able to make sales the way they should be making sales. Imagine this, that they are going to compete with prices and quality and all other things that may come into play. And again, the culture of our people thinking imported is always better than what we are producing here. So when you have situations like that arise, you would find out that the effort of these farmers, they had bought maybe fertilizers, bought seedlings at high cost and engaged in this production. At the time of harvest, which is very near now, you allow products to come in from outside the country. Take rice, for example, or any other item. You have it coming, milk, anything that is coming in. The cost of production of this rice outside this country may be lower than the cost of production in Nigeria. You remember that we are battling with our cost of power production in terms of diesel cost, in terms of electricity, price of electricity and all that. Now, the rate of electricity is so high in Nigeria. So if you have a lower rate in another country, the product will come in cheaper than what is being produced here in Nigeria. So if it comes in cheaper, then the person that engaged in this production, who had employed people, who had one way or the other put a lot of gains for the economy of Nigeria, will not be positioned to suffer loss. Now, if this person suffers loss, how will this person pick up to produce again for the next season? It means you will repeat this process of opening up the borders, free, suspending duties and tariffs, and other emergency decisions that we are taking currently. So you see, it is important for government to exercise a lot of caution in this situation as we are now. Government should exercise a lot of caution in their decisions. It may seem very popular. Oh, food items have come in, it is cheap. But the consequences, the long-term consequences, is there. So what are you doing when you are producing in Nigeria? You are providing employment for people. When you are providing employment for people, you are boosting the purchasing power of people. So that is why some countries, when they want to grow their economy, they close their borders and see that they are self-sustained. They do things to make sure that whatever they need, they produce for themselves. So if you want to wear shirts, you want to wear shoes, everything is produced within your country.
But then it's a really dicey one, Marvel, because if you want to depend on the things that we produce here, first of all, business conditions or working conditions are not favorable here for so many businesses to process some of the things that have been produced. That's just one. And then number two, the issue of insecurity that they say is the reason we don't produce as much. People don't go to their farms because either herders farmers clash, or bandits go into farms and shut down the farms and take over the farms and all of that. At this point, we haven't tackled the main issues when it has to do with production here in this country. So don't you think that is the reason that they are depending solely on importation?
It shouldn't be so. if you look at the insecurity situation in Nigeria, you look at the cost of production in Nigeria, and you consider all this and feel that you are making gains when you are importing things into the country, you would also see you losing out. The, the major issue we are also having, one of the major issues we are having in this country currently is the foreign exchange issue.
Yes.
So, how do we strengthen our forex? It is by exporting. So, if you have any mind that you are gaining when you are importing, then you will lose it out when your purchasing power drops terribly, because you will now be looking for money to even buy what you are importing, because you are not generating, you are not producing. So that's why a lot of people will hear them say, let us focus on production, that productivity is key. So if you are able to produce what you eat, that you are making gains. So if you import, it means you are spending money to buy things in that you did not produce. So you do not have any value added to your currency, you do not have any value added to your economy. You are depending on other countries and enriching other countries. So when you keep enriching other countries, your economy will keep going down. That is where we are even coming from, that we have found ourselves in the situation that we have found ourselves now. We are in debt, terribly in debt. How to come out of buffer some of these pains, just find a balm for this pain that we're having, and we go on a direction that is going to still worsen our situation. So when you open up your border and say, oh, come, bring in goods, and you keep a gap of 6 months, that's why I say it is too much. That 6 months can cause a lot of damage to the economy. That 6 months may become like 1 year, because we know how it is when these things arrive in port, the date it arrives also time, you will be clearing this food for the next 6 months upon after the 6 months given. So you may be having a situation where you import food for about 1 year. Now, when we now come back to our production capacity, you now find out that those people that had invested in production, that they are now losing. Those people that have invested in production, that they are now losing. Because what they put in to produce, they have not been able to gain it, to regain it, because cheaper items have come into the market. So when they are now selling, they may be selling at losses. They may not be able to compete with the outside countries, with the foreign countries that are bringing things into the country. So that is why government has to be very, very cautious at this time in the kind of decisions that they make. They do not have to be hasty in these decisions.
Still talking about around that angle, now the CBN has made it known that there will be a monetary policy meeting to discuss measures to address the country's escalating inflation and economic hardship, and the meeting is scheduled for next Monday and Tuesday. What are we or you expecting from the CBN governor at this point? Some people, I'm going to before we get to what Man and Nasima are saying right now, even with the organized labor, also blaming it on the interest rates, that has been increased by the CBN governor. I would like to know from your perspective, what are you expecting the CBN governor to do at this point? It seems, like a really tough one.
It is a very, very tough one for the CBN governor. And I say it and I'll say it again. I really commend him so far for the steps that he has taken. It is not an easy thing to manage us, as it were. Somebody was discussing with me yesterday and was placing Argentina and Nigeria, because we are running. I know people will say Argentina's inflation rate is far higher than what we are experiencing in Nigeria, but It's the same problem that we are having. So now, the CBN, they are focused on bringing down the inflation rate.
Yeah.
In their focus on bringing down the inflation rate, they are faced with this difficulty with the fiscal side of the game. That's when I say fiscal, FISCAL, fiscal side of the game. Talking about government expenses, you hear the rumor of an aircraft being bought for the president. It's a rumor. I'm not sure if they have done so or not. Now, government is not spending as if we are in financial crisis. Government is not spending as if the economy is bad. Government is still spending as if we are in a boom economy. Now, that is on the one side. The decision of CBN to ensure that interest rate that you mentioned is really, really a problem for manufacturers. That's why SMIDA, Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, and maybe NECA must be speaking now. NECA, the Commerce Association will be, all of them will be speaking because they are in that problem, in real deep problem. If you look at it, the decision that government has been making regarding the economy generally has been very, 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 very difficult for CBN to be able to make the kind of decisions that they should be making. We have a situation where the manufacturers are battling with the cost of electricity, cost of power. Cost of power is very, very high, and it's affecting the cost of production. So what we are having today is that manufacturers are not comfortable at all with the cost of production. So beyond the cost of production, you still will be battling with the foreign exchange. Of course, all that will go into cost of production. When you think about it, engaged in manufacturing, there's no way you may not be going for loan, taking loan. So if you are going to take loan, what interest are you paying to take the loan? So these are issues around these things. If CBN is not careful, they would allow so much money in the system. And if they do, it's going to affect the inflation rate. If they now tighten it up as they have tightened it up now, it is affecting production, the productivity in the nation. So these are issues that are bothering the head of this the CBN. And in the Military Policy Committee meeting that they are going to have soon, this will top the agenda of the Military Policy Committee, that interest rate issue. They have made some gains, according to the CBN governor a few weeks ago. They have made some gains. Whether they are going to bring in these gains to bring down the interest rate issue, or they are going to maintain it the way it is now, or even increase it, it's another thing completely. But what I think may happen is that they may want to put a little relief for the manufacturers by reducing the interest rate. If they reduce the interest rate, it will encourage production in Nigeria. If it encourages production in Nigeria, it will be so good for us to encourage production as we are moving towards the harvest season. If that comes, from the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, from the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, and from NASIMA. They will be having a lot of pressure from them because it's really, really affecting business of people. You hear companies declaring losses since this beginning of this year. A lot of companies have left Nigeria, and a lot of companies are really struggling. So how do you help this economy? Because if you allow these companies to die and keep dying, you are going to put a lot of people in the unemployment market. So when you have a high rate of unemployment, it becomes a problem. Now, in the face of all this, people's purchasing power has dropped so much, the value of the naira has dropped so much, and NLC are asking for higher pay. So all these issues coming to government at this time, it's a tall one. How they are going to deal with it is another thing completely. But for now, we still keep looking at what government can do to help the situation.
There are some.
We talk about mechanized farming.
This like long term, because what we need are long term solutions, things that we don't need to hear this issue again. We had a guest yesterday that was talking about how the figures are no longer galloping, they are just soaring, they're just going way up and not coming down. Well, how do we resolve this issue and then we don't hear about it for a very long time? Especially the issue of food inflation.
There's no magic wand about it. We came from a background that had us, borrowing money. You talk about the oil swap deals. So now government
and there's
have
another
to be
one
paying
that's,
back. They are still thinking about going to borrow, because they need to balance it in terms of the people surviving in this time. When you look at a figure like in Q1 in 2023, you had about 66.2 million Nigerians being in hunger. 1 year after, you have over 100 people are experiencing this hunger crisis so heavily in Nigeria. How many are we in Nigeria? So 200 and something, almost half of Nigerians are in severe hunger crisis. There's no middle class again in Nigeria. This is not as a result of something that just happened overnight. To also turn it around cannot also happen overnight. So there is nothing, when once government begins to be so hasty in making economic decisions and in trying to redeem the situation as it stands now, they may be putting themselves in more problem for the future. If we want to see a better 2025-2026, then we need to follow this process strategically. We need to be slow a bit about it. But governments still have to put things in place to give us hope. And that's why I'm talking about suggestions about building business hubs. We talked about the ranching issue the other time. And people are politicizing it. We should play down on politics. We should play down on these things and see how we could build trust in ourselves and see how we could allow government do what they need to do at the pace that is strategic, that can fill in and fit into these things. And government, on its part, has to be very open in their communication, because sometimes when they are not open in their communication, it breeds distrust. And where there is distrust, people do not really see what you can do. And my emphasis is on the fact that you cannot just wave a magic wand to turn around things. That is, this thing cannot be turned around. It's not just possible for you to wake up and say, we are going to have a better economy next week. It is not possible. So we need to look at it and be truthful to ourselves and deal with this situation as we have at hand today. The culture of the people comes to play here. The mentality of receiving gift. Say, bring the palliative, let us share it. Our culture has to find a way to change our culture as well. We must speak truth to ourselves. It is not that you have a handwork. You are not promoting your handwork. You just expect government, give me this, give me that. Where is government taking it from to give out? We must be truthful to ourselves that there are no two ways about it. The other day, I heard the Akwa State governor say, when people, the youth shouted, build the youth, build the nation. The governor said, let the youth build themselves too. Because if you don't build capacity in yourself and you still say building, who is building the youth? It has to come from you. It has to come from within. So that culture has to be imbibed. That culture has to be in us, that we are able to build ourselves and prepare to be more productive and just get doing things that are more productive to the economy than to be receiving palliative from government. We should take our minds away from palliative mentality and begin to think of how to be useful to ourselves. I am exposed to some people these days in Agua. You see, you have people come and say, I want to work, and you give them something to do. They just are not able to do what you are assigning for them to do. But they will say, I can do it, I can do it. You give it to them, they cannot do it because they do not have the patience, they do not have the mind to think about how to add value to wherever they find themselves. So let me make simple example. You call somebody on the road, please help me wash this car. Say, I can wash it very well, but he's not diligent about it. He's not even passionate about what he wants to do. All what they want to do is to collect money. Now, you take your car to the mechanic, you ask the mechanic to fix your car for you. You say, I can fix it, I can fix it. But when the chips gets down, he fails to fix it with no apologies. So you tell him, you've even spoiled something here in this car. And he says to you, oh, sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. But find something for me now. And I've been here since morning. But the car that you took to him, he has not repaired it. So instead of repairing, maybe he spoiled something in the car. I said, please, sir, I've not eaten since morning. Just give me something. Just give me something. Because we are failing to be diligent about what we are doing. We are failing to take ourselves serious about productivity. So when we talk about productivity, we still look at it as an external thing. Or we're still looking at it as a concept. We're still looking at it as something that is not real world issue. This is not the mentality that we should be having. So there is food crisis in Nigeria. That's a truth. To come out from that food crisis, we need to produce food in Nigeria. The solution is not to import food. Government is clear about it that they are importing as a palliative. But there is this aspect of it. We should also think about the consequences. Every action that you take, there is bound to be a consequence. So if we know that we should be exporting food, then we should think about what to do to be exporting food. So if there is a break, I say we suspend. Let us have 1 week, 2 weeks to be importing the food. We should not rejoice over it because what we fail to pay today, we will pay for it tomorrow. So if you feel that, oh, at least prices will reduce for 1 day, 2 days. So how about the third and fourth and fifth day? What will happen on that at that time? So we should all put our hands together and see how to think about productivity in the real sense of it.
All right. Thank you, Marvel. Let's open the phone lines right now. I'm sure that, people would like to give their input concerning this, because this, as I said earlier, bothers us all. It's food inflation. We're all going to the same market. So do also join the discussion by calling the phone numbers 0803 085 7755 or 0809 066 6909, or send in a message to our WhatsApp, and the number is 0809 066 6909. We're also streaming live on Facebook. The handle is Memories 965 FM.
Hello.
Good morning to you, Akwan.
Good morning, Lady Sharon.
Welcome.
And good morning, the old fellow.
It's not also it's not here. Yeah.
Okay. Extend my greetings to him.
That's fine.
This is Akwan calling from you.
Welcome, Akwan.
This is an interesting discussion. But ironically, the guest there has been conflicting. We are talking about food shortage, and he's saying that 5 months is too long. He is talking about 2 weeks, while he's saying that it will take over 6 months to clear the imported food items. Let me say this. In 1976, when Obasanjo was the military head of state, he signed what they call the indigenization decree. I don't know whether he knows about it, which gives any manufacturing that Nigerians are not experts. Nigerians will have 60% share, while the foreigners will have 40% share. When Nigerians are experts, it is 100%. From 1976 to this time, how many years? Where are we today? Even countries like Cameroon and Benin Republic that practice dumping are better than us. And Nigerians are hungry. So I expected him to say, do it, and then you give grant to farmers. Because the government has the way with that. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that Nigerians are hungry. If they want to open the borders, it's okay. Because even if since we close borders, where have we arrived? Nowhere. The common man does not listen to grammar or economic policies from Massachusetts or London University. What they want is their stomach to be paid. So, let government import food and then give grants to farmers to balance whatever losses they have incurred. They have the money.
Thank you.
Let us not begin to say this and that and that. We cannot produce enough that will go around the country. If our goods are inferior, Nigerians prepare superior food.
All right,
that
thank
is
you.
what I expect. Not all those theories. They have taken out to nothing after over 40 years.
Thank you, Afan. All right, Tudor, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Sharon.
Welcome.
Good morning, my guest in the studio.
Good morning.
My people, I want to sincerely say that the major problem that we have in Nigeria is politics. Politics has taken over everything, such that politicians are those who are lavishing the Nigerian currency. They do not allow our money to have value, because the way they spend our money and the way they take this money to themselves makes things go so high, such that if a politician buys a motor that worth billions of naira, what do you expect the car manufacturers to do, or motor manufacturers to do? They will increase the price so that the ordinary person cannot buy the motor any longer. And the worst so far is that these politicians keep this money among themselves, and that money is useless, such that they spend it on something that cannot generate more revenue to the nation, neither to the people in the nation. So I want to say that this is only successful because of corruption. Because even the people who are the followers of these so-called leaders are not also sincere. Sometimes you see somebody speaking in favor of a particular leader, because that leader does not share that corrupt money he has with him or her. So that if he shares the money with him, they will sing praises to him, and also blaming the other person that is doing the same thing, that is not giving him his own share.
Okay.
So the problem that we are having, until we are able to administer discipline on people that are looting the money of this nation. And even from the little domains that we have, you find out that we will continue to see our inflation
All right, thank you.
Going up. So that is a problem that we are having.
Thank you. Good morning to you, Kevin. All right, we lost the call from Kevin, but let me take this WhatsApp message. Greetings, the anchor and your distinguished panelists. Palliatively speaking, wow. Palliatives would never aid to minimize or eradicate the current inflation in the country because you can't do the same thing and expect a different result. I rest my case. Bob Godwin. Thank you, Bob. Let's take this last call from Kevin. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Sharon.
Yeah.
Good morning, your panelists.
Good morning.
I want to start by saying all these palliatives. This is Kelvin calling from SHARON. The president has been giving palliative for many things to resume of the palliative, but no evidence. And according to what I heard, this palliative is strictly for the vulnerable. The question is, it only the vulnerable that vote for him? What about others? And if you're in the vulnerable, I don't think this will be going wrong with. So I think what we should do is either you should send this right to the market in order to trash the price of prices of price in the market. Would they, are they going to really rise? Would they buy petrol? Would they cook soup? What about what happens if they really rise? And at the end of the day, you don't even see the price of this rise. So I think it's not a welcome development.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, Marvel, you have 4 minutes left. So let's take advantage. Okay, let's take this last call before we go into your analysis. Good morning.
No, good morning, man. God bless you all.
Yes, good morning.
Sunday is calling from a tenant.
I didn't get the name.
It's Sunday.
Okay, Sunday, welcome.
So I want to speak on the area of this economic situation of the country. This is not just happening overnight, just as the guy said the other time. Somebody caused it to become this way we find ourselves. Because the president don't waste time to even put things in other people who would not for a subsidy. If I was to be him, what I would have done, we are going to do vanity in other places. We start using our own food and then we stop importing other ones that will attract this foreign subsidy. If the importation of food became law and problem, why should the importation of food is not also banned so that Nigeria can produce food from here and eat from here? Then you will compare that thing. There is something bad inside that situation. The food where the Boko Haram and all the headman doesn't allow farmers to go into their farm. Even the one here where we plant, we will enter, finish everything. And it's what they're supposed to favor the import into the country because we cannot produce. And
all right.
Where we have abundance in our soil. And they will have put our refineries in order now to get the juice in the country so that the price can come down and enable people to do small business and cook up with.
Thank you, Sunday.
When anybody wants to think, we pay them, not those guys that the refinery that is not working is the problem that the fuel price has risen to 800 naira a liter. And they gained 100 plus when they took over this government. They are not doing well. Then they tell the government the truth.
Thank you, Sunday.
The truth. Then they know what to do.
Thank you.
Having me.
All right. Marvel.
Yes, so I would like to commend Kelvin for his contribution regarding the palliative issue, that we rather would have put in those products in the market, and it would help to bring down the prices of such products in the market. Then I'll also respond to the contribution by Abban regarding the food shortage issue and how to address it, the import-export issues. Now, what he's referring to as the indigenization decree was all meant to promote local content. That is why you have the expatriate quota and all that to balance, to promote productivity in Nigeria, to make sure that there is a transfer of technology in the mind of the people, as it were. That's a story for another day completely. So having said that, it is not about you having palliative. It is not about you having food for now and tomorrow you'll still be looking for what to eat. It is about sustaining a development, an economic development that has started well by ensuring that we promote our local production such that we can maintain employment, such that we can grow our purchasing power. That is the direction government is going currently. They are faced with challenges and they are trying to deal with those challenges. It is very, very elementary to think that you would import food and eat today, that you will suit yourself today, and tomorrow you may not have food to eat. So, in this regard, we should find a way to see how we could emphasize more on our local production and forget about importation, because importation will not help us to come out of this problem.
All right, thank you very much, Marvel. I know that you wrote down a number of things, a lot of things that you would have loved to say, but we're out of time. So thank you very much, Marvel Joseph Essien. It's always insightful to have you here on the Melting Point.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. The message is on WhatsApp and following through on our Facebook page. Remember that we always stream live on our Facebook page. Go follow and like the page. It is Memories 965 FM. Thank you once again for listening. My name is Sharon Mandor. Coming up at the top of the hour will be the EBBO belt. MC Asa would take over from here. My name is Sharon Mandor. We're back again for the midday news, and then after that, you catch me again tomorrow.